beginning. We're here on earth to know God, to love Him, to serve Him, to be happy with Him forever. That's why we're here. And sometimes suffering, and especially a suffering as deep and as wounding as His divorce, shakes up our life so much that we have to rethink everything. We have to rethink everything. We're tempted to think, isn't life basically over? Isn't what life was all about, which was marriage and a family, isn't that done? Isn't my mission spoiled forever? Isn't there a wrench thrown in the middle of God's works for my life and it's over? And God looks us in the eye and says, no way. No way. It's not just, again, of just looking at things the bright side. It's not about making lemonade out of lemons. It's a question of God being so much bigger, so much greater, so much more powerful, and most importantly, so much more loving than we could ever imagine. That's what it's about. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Can I still trust God more than ever? His love for me has not changed. His desire for each one of you to be a saint, to be an apostle, has not changed. He needs you to trust Him. He begs you to trust Him. He is not finished with you yet. He has things in store for you that go beyond anything that you can think right now. He's not finished with your life. And even if you look at yourself and say, no, things have really reached such a point, I don't think so. They say that the greatest artists are able to make masterpieces out of the poorest materials. And it's part of what shows their value as an artist. Maybe you've seen on television those competitions they used to have where you'd bring in a few artists. And the competition would be that a child would take a pencil or a piece of crayon and scribble something. And the artist would have, they were in competition, 5 minutes to use that scribble and to convert it into a drawing. And they would race to see who could put together the most beautiful drawing out of that scribble. And I used to love watching that when I was a kid because I couldn't believe what these guys were able to do. You'd get some, and all of a sudden he'd see in this something else and connect it and make it into, all of a sudden there was a house and clouds and all these things. And when the picture was done, you could still see where the original scribble had been, and yet now it was perfectly integrated into something that was magnificent. Don't you think that God can take your scribbles and make them into something more beautiful than you can imagine? Integrate them into a masterpiece. It's not the time to run away. It's not the time to turn our backs on Him. It's not the time to say, I tried you and you didn't work. I'm going to try something else. Come to me. And He's saying, come to me, especially when I feel like I am worth nothing, I can do nothing, I'm capable of nothing. Come to me, all you who are weary and find life burdensome. Everyone in this room knows what it's like to find life burdensome, as if life itself were just a big rock on my shoulder that I'm carrying. Come to me, and you'll find rest for your souls. Learn from a man who failed. Learn from a man who went into his hometown to preach in the synagogue and got carried off to be thrown off a cliff by his townspeople. Learn from a man whose religious leaders were persecuting him. Learn from a man who the local government tortured and put to death. Learn from a man who, in human eyes, couldn't get anything right, whose own disciples took off because his teaching was so strange on the bread of life. Learn from me. Learn from me who in Gethsemane begged God, take this cup away from me, and he didn't do it. Learn from me who on the cross cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And the last thing he says connected with that is shoulder my yoke. I mean, you're down in the dumps and you feel like you can't do anything, and Jesus is asking you to work. Get back in the fields. Come on, I need somebody to do the plowing, and that's you. Yeah. Part of the healing process that we need to go through has to do with working. It has to do with getting in the game. And not getting in the game the way we talked about before of, the discotheque scene. Getting in the game means shouldering his yoke. It means working together with him. It means maybe for the first time in our lives taking him seriously when he says, seek first the kingdom, and everything else will take care of itself. I think that many of us feel like our trust in God has been blasted. It's been, sometimes even it can seem irreparably damaged, that it'll never be the same as it was. We used to believe he would take care of us always and everything would be fine. And now we don't believe that anymore. I think that everyone here, I think you trust in God a lot more than you realize. Trust often isn't pretty. Trust is not often, just like a 7-year-old saying, oh, yeah, everything's going to be just great. Trust comes to be deepened and to be purified precisely through sorrow. Do you still pray? You wouldn't do that if you didn't trust God. Do you try to live according to God's will in your life? You wouldn't do that if you didn't trust him, that somehow he knew what he was doing. Where do you turn in your hour of need? Alcohol cabinet, bottle of Prozac, MTV? I doubt it. Trusting God is our gift to God. And I'd leave you with that challenge. If you really want today to show God that you still love him, the best way is by trusting him. It's the gift that he doesn't have. There's nothing that you can give him that will please him more than trust.